I think it's just going to get weirder and weirder and weirder, and finally it's going to be so weird that people are going to have to talk about how weird it is. Eventually people are going to say, what the hell is going on? It's not enough to say it's nuts. You have to explain why it's so nuts. The invention of artificial life, the cloning of human beings, possible contact with extraterrestrials, the systems which are in place to keep the world sane are utterly inadequate to the forces that have been unleashed.
Welcome back to Forbidden Knowledge News. I'm your host, Chris Matthew. Today my guest is Cyrus Ryan. Be sure to watch my films Doors of Perception on Amazon Prime, Occult Louisiana's on Tubi, Roku, Apple, and many more. We are booking guests for February. If you have suggestions or you'd like to be a guest, email me forbiddenknowledgenews@gmail.com. Our website is forbiddenknowledge.news. It's also the home of the Forbidden Knowledge Network, where we feature some of your favorite podcasts and content creators. Today I want to welcome Cyrus Ryan. He is an author and director of Northern School of Esoteric Wisdom, where he works with others developing esoteric group work guided by several masters of wisdom. Cyrus, welcome. How you doing?
Oh, I'm doing great. It's really great to be here.
Thank you so much for coming on. You've been on your spiritual path since the 70s, studying various Eastern traditions and practices. And as I said in my intro, you're the director of the Northern School of Esoteric Wisdom, which I'd like to learn more about, as well as your spiritual journey. And as you stated in your talking points, you wanted to share some of the esoteric knowledge you've gained over the years, as well as the communication you've had with etheric teachers. A lot to get to here. Before we do, this is your first time on. Tell us a little bit more about yourself and let the audience know how they can find out more.
Well, as you said, I'm the director of Northern School of Esoteric Wisdom. It's a very small esoteric school, but we have members from India, Australia, the United States, of course, and Canada, but not that many. But we are involved in an Aquarian approach to spirituality versus a Piscean. Myself, I met my teacher in 1975, and I had just started to explore spirituality, reading a number of books, etc. Came from a rock and roll background, but somehow things didn't work out. I used to, promote concerts and whatnot. And somehow things just turned the wrong direction, and found myself questioning a lot of things. And then I somehow met this gentleman, I call him in my books RN, and he had deep insights and a huge understanding that just blew my mind. And as soon as I heard him talk with a small group of people, I knew that that's what I wanted. He talked about the masters of wisdom, these enlightened yogis, who I usually call it now almost like a Star Trek effect. They watch and guide over us, but they don't interfere. Sort of like the Prime Directive on Star Trek. And that somehow just awakened something really deep inside of me. And so for 30 odd years until he passed away, myself and a small group of people worked delving deep. And somehow in 1978, just to give an example, I was meditating, and as I started to meditate, this force came and entered through me, and I was paralyzed. I could not move. But I knew it was a master of wisdom. My intuition knew. There were no words given, no words, anything. It's almost as if it was injected in me. Then at that time, I had rented this huge house. We were sort of ex-hippies. And we all lived together. It was like a 3-story house with 3 bathrooms, huge place. And I went and found my teacher and said, I just had this experience of this masterocracy. And he says, well, that's odd. We have nothing to do with him. That's not our line at all. And forgot about it. I just, well, happened, it happened. So then 3 weeks later, he's with his wife and kid. And they're on their way to Virginia Beach. That's where the Edgar Cayce Foundation is. And they stopped in Baltimore, sort of halfway to visit some friends. And that night, the masterocracy appears to him and gives him a word of power. And at first, he didn't believe it. And because he was not that interested in that, he was more philosophical and more inquiring. But mantra is a sacred science with very little is known. But the fact that this master gave it.
You said
and then
word of power
go ahead.
Is a mantra, essentially?
It is a mantra. The difference, to give you an example, anybody can go onto YouTube and find a mantra and chant it. It's sort of like, to use an analogy, if you're really hot and you have a fan in your hand and you fan yourself, you'll cool off. But if a master gives a mantra, it's as if you have a huge fan, electric fan, and it's always plugged in. The difference is huge. So over 30 years, that mantra grew into an entire teaching. And from that, he was given several other words of power. And of course, he was transformed, changed his whole direction of his philosophy, you might say. He had his awakening when he was 16 in a place called Borobudur, which is an ancient Buddhist site in Indonesia, because he was from Indonesia, but eventually came to Canada, where I live, in 1973, and I met him in end of 1974. And in 1978, the masterocracy came. That's all covered in my first book, Living on the Inner Edge. Quick little picture here. Right. And then several other mantras were given. It took him a while to really recognize the power that was in this mantra. It was sort of like we're little mice put in a labyrinth and given a direction and some extra cheese to give us strength. But we had to figure it out ourselves to see what it is. The thing is that it opened up a whole inner world that you read about, and then we went beyond that inner world and what happens. And there's a lot of, to use the term of your podcast, forbidden knowledge there that's only allowed out within the group structure or the ashram, the inner and outer ashram. And then when he passed away, it'll be 15 years this February, somehow he died in 2011, and somehow after that, as if it was all, he had reached a level, it's called mantra shakti. He could change the way you feel in your being through chanting certain mantras. He became like a master of it. But somehow it was passed on to me, not by any written thing or nobody said anything, but the masterocracy came again with the present group that has grown around me and gave us 2 other words of power. One for more, how would you call, entry level. Then there's the one that we have now. We call it the soul mantra. And then he gave one that only a few of us in this group can chant, of a much higher quality. And somehow through this blessing, this group work is developing on an Aquarian level. So what is the difference between Aquarian and Piscean? We're now in an overlap period between the two ages. Piscean is fading out, the Aquarian is coming in. We are like pioneers. Like when the pioneers came to America, they had to chop the wood, clear the land. It was really hard. The Piscean method is you have a teacher and you're a student. Teacher would confer with the student, give the student some direction. In the old days, like in the times of the like Milarepa, many of these other great saints that you can read about, you'd go into a cave, go to the mountain, and you meditate, and you withdraw from the world. The Aquarian way is working in the world, but not being of the world, and working in a group formation. So a group of like-minded individuals whose souls are of a similar level, not the same, doing invocations can invoke a lot more and be more dynamic than an individual. If you read some of the stories of the saints in India, even up to the time of Yogananda, who came to America, that was still very Piscean, still very belief-oriented. The Aquarian is group and understanding, knowing, not believing, but knowing through your experience, having the experience and learning from experience, both in the group work. It's more difficult, it's more costly, takes a lot out of you, but the rewards are much greater. And you enter into a different world of knowledge that was not that available to people before. Sort of started in the late 60s, even though the group work started in 1920s, 1930s, but very slowly. And then it started gaining, how would you call, not popularity, but more people getting involved. In Canada and the US, there are groups all over. Most of them are very small, but they're all experiments. And some of the results are very interesting. Some are maybe not so interesting. I don't know. So I've been involved with this now for 50 years. I'm not young, unfortunately. I'd like to stay young. Young at heart, but physical body, sometimes. Yeah. But it has been very rewarding. And then I wrote another book called Esoteric Writings that talks about more of the present group, I don't know if that's visible, and the advent of these masters of wisdom and the type of knowledge that they are giving us. Very different. And one of the things my teacher used to say is that we've gone too far, which means that you can't share some of this outside. Some you can, some you can't. And sometimes secret knowledge can be staring you dead in the face. And yet, if you're not ready to recognize it, you can't see it. And these advanced beings use what's called blinds. You can be looking at something, but they put a blind over it, but you don't see it for what it is. It's like hidden from you. And the great occultist, HPB, Helena Petrovna Blavatsky, the Theosophical Society, said also that Maya can be used to also distort and change things. So a lot of people search for secret knowledge and wisdom, but it's not readily available. There are certain laws that condition secret knowledge. For instance, you can read online a lot where people say because of all the billionaires that are around today, that there is enough money to feed everyone. If they would share their money, there'd be enough to give everyone, so there wouldn't be the poor, the struggling in the same way. But it's not possible because there are certain laws related to matter and finances and money is matter. There are certain, and it's been this way forever. You go back to the robber barons, the feudal lords, the kings, what have you, Rome, etc. It doesn't change because certain laws guide it. It's the same with knowledge. Certain laws guide knowledge, and certain types of knowledge are conditioned relative to certain karmas and individuals. So a lot of things what people don't realize, knowledge is matter. It has substance. For instance, you can read, say, an esoteric book that has some real knowledge in it and not understand it, because some of it, like the books of the Master DK through Alice A. Bailey, is actually written in the higher mental plane, though it looks in black and white. And so is not easy to penetrate the knowledge. It's just like if you become a lawyer, they have their own language, with alls and two withs and whatnot. You have to penetrate the knowledge, the language. So there's all these laws that protect it. And the same with mantra. If an individual is not prepared and has or learns the notes, or someone who has the right to give a mantra with the energy, the Shakti, and gives it incorrectly, person can go haywire. Because it affects all your different aspects of your being that people are not aware of. So it is fascinating.
I think a good place to start would be to get a better understanding of the etheric masters that you're describing, what they are, how you are able to connect with them, the modalities you use, and maybe some of the most profound information received.
That's an excellent question. And do you want to write a book starting about that? So these masters, they exist on the Buddhic plane. For us, you have the physical plane, our physical water, gas, air, etc. And then for etheric, each plane has 7 subplanes. Then you have the astral plane, where when you go to sleep and you dream, you enter into the astral plane. When you're at work, working at a computer, and you're organizing your thought, you're on the lower mental plane. But then when you go to the higher mental plane, it's like Einstein, when he saw relativity, he got the insight for relativity. The higher mental plane relates to the laws of our planetary system and how it functions, time, dimension, relativity. He got a glimpse of it. Then he had to take that knowledge down to the lower mental plane and do the math and organize it. The masters live on the plane above that, the Buddhic plane. For us, that's the plane of intuition, not psychism. Intuition is impersonal, but sees in totality at once. So the masters have an at-one-ment with totality on their plane, but they do come down to the lower planes. When asked in one of the books called the Mahatma Letters, was written in 1880s or something, are the masters perfect? And one of these masters, the master Kutumi, said, on the higher plane where we see and we're in what they call samadhi, we see totality and can see correctly. But when we have to come down to humanity, we're actually affected by the miasma of the mass human auras of the planet. And that can affect how our knowledge is transmitted. So these masters live in for us, a formless world, but they said for them it is not formless. So the Buddhic plane is not easy to touch. Most of us are in the astral, physical, astral, lower mental plane.
Mm-hmm.
So being in contact with these masters generally has to do with a karmic alignment from past lives that you have some link with either the master, an advanced disciple of the master, and it continues in the present life. So for me, I remember I was at a party. I hadn't just began looking at spirituality, and some young lady just came into the party, and people said, "Oh, she just came back from India. Isn't that cool?" And I heard her say, "Well," the people asked, "Well, what did you do there?" She says, "Well, I went to an ashram." And that word stuck in me. What's an ashram? I asked her, and she said, "Well, you just hang out." Oh, come on, it's more. No, you hang out. And then a week later, in Time magazine, there was an article on ashrams and all kids going from the West to stay in these ashrams. So certain words trigger what we call samskaras. Samskaras are latent subconscious memories from your past life. So that can also exist with a master of wisdom. But you have to prepare your body, purifying your body, purifying your ideas, thoughts, etc. And then if the right circumstances occur, in my case, meeting my teacher, RN, created that dynamic group orientation, and then it happened. It wasn't something that I went and did. It's more it happened. And then over a number of years, it evolved. And now it's still evolving. So I reach out for people who are really interested. I have, I call it Esoteric Talks, a Zoom online meeting twice a month that people can join. Northern School, same with part of Northern School of Esoteric was we never charge money. We live if you donate money, or I pay for it, because it's not an adventure to earn a living. Right? And so those people who are interested and have this karmic link find us step by step, slowly.
Mm-hmm.
And as we in this group, there are really, in the book, 9 of us that are closely associated. And then there's much more on the peripheries. Esoteric groups generally have 3 levels. If you go to India, the ancient temples had different walls. You have an outer wall, an inner wall, and another inner wall that represented the 3 different levels till you get to the Holy of the Holies. This is an archetypical aspect to an esoteric school. So there's an inner group, slightly more outer group, and then an outer group. Mm-hmm. And each one, their soul is at different levels. And most, even though I'm older, all my students are young. The average age is about 35, which to enter the esoteric work, the best time is when you're in mid-20s to early 30s, because then you're more malleable and can adapt because you have to transform your being. If you're much older, say 50, you're sort of set in your ways. It's not easy to change. You know what they used to say, the Jesuits used to say, give me a kid before he's 7 and I'll, change him, whatever. There's a certain law involved in that. There are certain periods of how the personality develops. But for the esoteric work, I mean, my youngest student is 27, which is like a perfect, actually there's one that's 12, because I know her from a past life and I know what's there, but she's only 12. So I don't know. It's fascinating when you start to awaken inwardly. For instance, I was at a Christmas party some of my students and other people. And all of a sudden, this little kid came running up and hugged me. I'd never met the kid. The kid was 3, I think 3. And her parents came over, like, what are you doing jumping on this man? Then I recognized that it was a person I knew that died about 4 years ago who had been an esotericist. And the kid recognized. So these links exist through time. And on the esoteric path, with especially when you come under these masters, the past and the present and even looking into the future meld into one time. You become very aware of your past in your present time.
Is it meditation that you and your group are utilizing to achieve access to these realms and access to the masters?
Yes, you need to learn how to focus your center and create a center of awareness. Our meditation isn't like a mindfulness, you want peace. Ours is the opposite. It's intense focusing inwardly. So we follow the laws of the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali that were written thousands of years ago. They're not even sure, but that is probably the first self-help book ever written. So in the Yoga Sutras, there's the Astanga Yoga, the 8 yogas or the 8 limbs. There's the 4 outer yogas and the 4 inner yogas. We concentrate on the 4 inner yogas. And the first one's called Pratyahara, how to withdraw your consciousness from the periphery into a center point, and then how to detach from your senses and build that center point till you enter the next stage, which is called dharana, which means yogic concentration. It's a different concentration than somebody working, say, building a table or at a computer. You're concentrating for sure. And then once you can achieve a certain level of dharana, of concentration, then you move into dhyana. Dhyana is meditation. When you have yourself as the observer, the object that you are meditating on, then there's the flow of energy of observing. When they start to unite, then there's what they call a laya point. A laya point is like a seal. In an engine, you have a seal that keeps the gas separate from the oil. It keeps a separation. There is a psychological, call it a etheric seal. You know, when you see a supersonic jet, there's many pictures online passing the sound barrier, and it shows that cloud around it. That's the seal between subsonic and supersonic. It exists as above, so below on the inner plane. When you reach dhyana, you come to a point where you can pass through. So if you pass through, you enter into the final stage, which is called samadhi. Then you enter into a different world. And through that, you gain knowledge instantly. It's only happened to me several times in my life. I'll explain about one in my first book. But what I've just explained to you now is what I learned through that experience. By going through that seal, entering into a different world. That's called samprajnata samadhi. Then you're in a different world. When I entered that world, there were all these beings of light watching. One of them was focused on me, guiding my center as like a point of consciousness, traveling in bright space. But they told me to focus on another point. And then I entered what's called asamprajnata samadhi and passed into another world, and then entered into a past world, and then eventually came back into my body, and I could feel myself entering through the top of my head. But then I gained the knowledge of how the relationship between the seer the center of awareness, the object, and the relationship, and what happens to pass through and to enter into the higher realms. Which hasn't happened.
Is there
Go ahead.
is
Sorry.
there any kinds of intelligences or entities that should be avoided whenever entering these realms, or are the realms you're entering free of any types of negative beings?
There are negative beings, that is for sure, but most of them are on the astral plane. There are much greater beings on the higher planes. More of these negative entities can affect you depending again on your karma. Many, many, many people who aspire to this type of knowledge have links to negative, let's call it schools of occultism from the distant past. And when they start to make progress, sometimes these schools come alive in their inner world exploration and try to capture them back. And then they sometimes run into entities. But entities could be everywhere. Give an example. Two of my students moved into a new condo and they were being bugged by some entity constantly. So I had to come over. We did ritual, cleaned it out, and we found out the entity, the building was built on a bad land, might have been an ancient indigenous person burial ground or something, and they can feel the entity around their place but can't enter anymore. So as you become more aware, you become aware of these different life forms that exist all around. You know, my wife is really psychic, really clairvoyant. So we went to a bed and breakfast a few years ago in the country, and behind was a thick wood and marshy area. And she was in the shower, came out of the shower, and she said, I hope I can use the word Indian, these war paint and what. He came into my shower. I'm saying, you know, he says some sort of entity. And she said, I'm going to bed. And I went to meditate and I started seeing this thing and it came at me. And as it came at me, it morphed into more of a, uh, how would you call it, more demonic appearance. So, yeah, it was some soul who might have been murdered or killed violently. And then as his soul eventually left, an entity took over his astral shell, and it still exists in this area on the lower astral plane. And if you're sensitive, it's attracted to you, can attack you.
You said something very interesting, that a person's soul will exit this realm, but a negative entity can take over its astral shell. Is that right?
Yes, yes.
Is this what we're
So
experiencing with what we understand as demons?
yes and no, because there are many different types of entities. But on the lower levels, yes, the people who die violently, because of the effect they can have what's called an astral shell, especially if in the past they've died violently in the past. That astral shell exists and it recurs their death again. And yes, it can be used by more what they call earthbound spirits that want to connect with the planet again. They're wandering around in this astral realm, but they want contact to the physical for their sensual appetites, and they will use an astral shell. Many times in seances and whatnot, that's actually what's happening. It's not the person. The person's long gone, maybe even reincarnated, but the astral shell may be there and used, and it can be manipulated to look like anything.
Is there any particular methods that you would recommend for people that are attempting to access these realms so that they may avoid contact with these beings, or be able to be aware of what they're interacting with in some way?
One thing, if you're meditating, for instance, say you're in a, in your house, bedroom or whatever, wherever you're meditating, and say it's a warm day, but all of a sudden the room gets cold. You actually feel cold. Then you're touching some negative entity. Usually the room will go cold. Depending on your practice, if you're sounding like the Om, or if you're Christian, then you can radiate the Om silently with golden light until the coldness dissipates. If you're Christian, visualize a cross, radiate that with golden light, with Amen. If you're Buddhist, visualize the Buddha or Bodhisattva, etc. A lot of people have like what they call sleep paralysis. And that's the same thing. What's happening is you become paralyzed because your consciousness has moved onto the astral plane, but you don't know it because you haven't been trained. So you're still aware, you wake up, but then you try to move and you can't. And then sometimes you feel like you're spinning or lifting up, or you feel weird. That's an entity pulling you out. Then you have to do the same thing. Sound the Om over, Om, radiate until you can move your body. Then you should get up and take some chocolate or something sweet, raisin, fruit, to anchor you back in your body. You're being pulled out, which means that you have a proclivity towards that from some past life. And that means you may have been playing around what I like to joke and call it hocus pocus in some past life.
I see.
And that's how most of these entities come.
Getting back to contact with these etheric masters and the information that you've received, could you give us some examples of some of the most profound information, at least what you can tell us?
Sure. No, one of the things that people do not really understand, and I put it in my book a lot and stress it, as my teacher did, that our soul, we have the soul on the higher mental plane, right? Even religion talks about your soul. People say, oh, my soul is. But the soul is dual. It's not singular. It has its reflection within the heart of each human being. So the soul projects only a portion of itself. We are only a reflection of a portion of that total soul. And it exists in our heart. This is what has to be found to awaken. The personality doesn't awaken. The soul stirs its reflection, but then the energy from the soul then translates into the personality mind, and then you start searching. But that which searches is not that which awakens. And uncovering that which awakens is the entrance into the deeper esoteric. Thus, the word personality, coming from the Latin persona, means to hide. So this duality of the soul is hinted at in some esoteric writings, but not clearly. So I try to make it clearly, because it's until you can find it, doesn't mean anything. It's just a certain type of knowledge. But when you can find it and center your awareness in this reflection of the soul, we call it the essence or the essential nature. Gurdjieff talked about it a bit for those that have read the Gurdjieff-Uspensky work. He said the essence is what you're born with. The personality is which develops. So we have to find, and that's why in the Bible it says, become as little babes, or something like that. Become as, that is this essence. That is the manger of the Christ child. That's its esoteric meaning. Is this reflection of the soul, which is a place which is neither dry nor wet, nor, I forget there's another word, but it's hidden within us. So meditation, or the meditation that we do, is to uncover it. So for instance, there's an ancient, and I start most of my students off with it, meditation called Atma Vichara, which is self-inquiry. I'm not this hollow, empty body that's growing old and will die. I'm not my emotions. I'm not my happiness, not my sadness. I'm not my anxieties. And then I am not my thoughts. If I'm not my thoughts, not my emotions, not my bodies, then who am I? Then you come back to Hermes Trismegistus, man, know thyself. But one has to work through the labyrinth of all our thoughts, feelings, pains, frustrations, to find this inner part that is a reflection of our soul. That is an esoteric thought. But that's primarily what I teach a great deal, to help people find that and experience it. Then they have experiences, past lives, masters of wisdom, the disciples, deities. And the other thing that is, I won't call it esoteric, but because of our Western education and upbringing and the way we're taught, we think we can do. I can do it. I know I can do it. I'm smart. That's the illusion. You cannot do it alone. You need help. The analogy is, if you're in prison and you want to escape, it's very hard to escape on your own. You need generally help. Somebody to know, watch the guards, another one to watch how to open the doors, another one. However, I've never been in prison. So, however, then you also need somebody outside the prison, getaway car, whatever, to help you skedaddle, right? That represents like the master or the disciple. They're outside the prison. We are in the prison trying to figure out how to get out. And a lot of people do not like discipline. It takes discipline, perseverance, and strength, and humility all together.
In one of your talking points, you say the past is the engine of the present and everything recurs
Yes.
and repeats. Could you expand on that a bit?
Yes. That's what we don't see. That is also a very esoteric idea. That there was a great saint, a lot of Buddhist people know it, Padmasambhava. They call him Guru Rinpoche. That was one of his statements, that the engine is the, the past is the engine of the present. Even in the Bible, it says there's nothing new under the sun. It's the same statement, that everything repeats. So, for instance, I'll give an example through a story. When my group was developing, before it had really taken shape, there was this gentleman who kept coming, but he was short. And he could not let go of this idea, why am I so short? He was like 5'2", 5'3". I'm not tall, I'm 5'6", 5 something. But so I said, it has created like a trauma in you that in your past lives, you've been short too. So the thought and the pain and the difficulty is still there. So where you have traumas and difficulties in this present life is a recurrence of something that's carried over. You know how they say when you die, you can't take it with you? That's not true.
Yeah.
You take the essence of all memory that's contained. We use the word chitta. Chitta is a Sanskrit word That means mind stuff. The mind is subtle matter, and it holds memory. And this memory then is deposited, so to speak, in the body of your soul, which is like a hard disk drive that holds this memory. So then when you recur in your next life, those things that you have not grown, overcome, they manifest again. So the past is always driving your present.
Would you say that reincarnation is ultimately a decision that is made by us, or do we have to achieve something within a lifetime in order to have the option to exit, essentially?
There is no option to
Oh,
exit.
okay.
There is no
Okay.
choice. You have to overcome what they call the law of periodicity or rebirth. You have to become what they call an arhat. You have to go beyond humanity. So they call that in the esoteric the fourth initiation. The first initiation is when you enter into the mysteries and you're searching around. That could go on for a number of lives. The second initiation is when you achieve a certain control of the astral or the emotions in you, the water in you, the reactive aspect, and you start to purify it. So what it means is that your consciousness is moving more from the physical to the astral plane. Then when you achieve the third initiation, you become a soul-infused personality. The soul becomes the positive aspect, the personality, the negative. The soul controls the direction of the personality. You start to even develop certain powers at that time, what they call cities, lower level. The soul is sometimes called the Temple of Solomon in the Western esoteric tradition. At a certain stage, that temple has to be destroyed and the consciousness liberated from the soul and enters the Buddhic body. When that happens, you give up your humanity. You become more than human. But the human karma is finished. So the disciples of the Buddha were arhats. They had passed this level. When that happens, then you don't recur. You enter into another time body. Right now, we're in our physical body. Maybe I'll live till I'm 85. That's my time body from date of birth to when I die. But you have another time body related to your soul that exists for aeons and aeons. And then when you go beyond your soul, then you enter into the time body. We call it the logos, or call it the inner worlds. So there are all these different levels, so to speak. So until you achieve this, you have no choice as to your reincarnation. It happens. But here, I'll give you an example. Say you're an engineer and you've developed, the knowledge of engineering. And you about to die, but then there's Third World War and our civilization is wiped out. And then it starts from scratch again through cavemen, etc., etc. You may not reincarnate for aeons because you've got the memory of an engineer, and they may not need an engineer until the time of the Romans. So it might be thousands of years until you reincarnate based on the talents that you have developed. Where other people, some incarnate more rapidly, depending on the need.
Would you say that this realm, this reality, is essentially a school for us to learn and ascend those different levels that you were mentioning.
100%. And there are different schools. That's why it's the Northern School of Esoteric Wisdom. There are schools on the inner plane. There are Eastern schools, Western schools. There are different types. And they're actually schools. They have different names. So Northern School is an extension part of the Trans-Himalayan Arhat School, or Arhat Brotherhood, which is that particular school that was involved in bringing the ideas of esotericism to the West from the 1875 onwards. Previous to that, the West didn't know anything. In 1890, Vivekananda came to Chicago, the World Religion Congress, whatever it was called, and slowly then Yogananda and yogis came, and theosophy and different things all started around 1875. Other than that, if you go back to 1875 or United States 1900, how many people meditated, thought of the word karma, yoga, reincarnation, mantra? Nobody. But today, everybody knows those terms. I saw a truck going by, construction. It said karma construction. I mean, it's mainstream. And they talk about mantra in business. You know, you have your mantra in your sales speech or whatever.
Do you think anyone has the capability of connecting with these etheric masters if they're on a certain spiritual path?
I would say so. It depends on your karma. The Master DK, who wrote through Alice A. Bailey and created those blue books, says that the link is relative to karma, karmic association, and ashramic need. What do you have to offer these masters? What can you do to help humanity? They're not looking for people that just say, "Oh, cool, man, I contacted masters, and I'm just great." But what do you have to offer? What can you do?
Has the masters given any information about the current age that we're in? We seem to have entered a period where many people are seeking that spiritual connection, becoming aware of the nature of some of the systems that are corrupt in our reality, which then they turn to a different understanding of what this reality is. And there's a lot of people seeking answers right now. At the same time, we've entered this rapidly evolving technological age where there are many people reliant on technology and couldn't care less about spiritual concepts. So it's a very interesting time we're in. Have you received any information, or do you have any understanding about this specific time and where we're headed?
Well, yeah, there's quite a bit in those books of Alice A. Bailey on that. But also, one can see that, or from my experience, as these greater beings move closer to humanity, their vibration is of such a nature, it causes a lot of disruption. And it is through disruption, when people feel off balance, that they start to search. If things are good and everything's cool and you're just relaxed and chilling, you do nothing. You watch TV. But when things are disrupted, like what's going on now, especially in the West, that makes you think, makes you question, whether it's religion, spirituality, or what have you. But there's another aspect to it, a much further, or how would you say, more far-fetched. People like to think of God, and God in heaven is perfect. I think that's sort of what people think. That's not true either. It's an imperfect God. If it was a perfect God, as above, so below would be perfect. But the fact that it's imperfect God. So if you look at it, we live in a community of humanity, and we evolve. We have our neighborhoods, whatever. Then there's a community of souls on the higher mental plane. But there's also a community of gods on the much higher plane they call the plane of Adi. And these gods, who we have no real concept of, are evolving also. And as they evolve, they don't experience, obviously, turmoil like we do in our drama and our emotion, but it causes, let's use a Star Wars terminology, tremors in the Force that travels down through the masters, who then get a hint of what's going on. They try and inspire the disciples on the lower level to make changes. And as all this force comes down, it causes turmoil and change. And we're moving from Piscean to Aquarian. Now, have you ever looked at the symbol astrologically of Aquarius? It's jagged. Does that look like smooth and harmonious? Right. Aquarius is upsetting. It's also strongly under Uranus. Uranus is upsetting change, turmoil. And so forces have been unleashed, especially through certain beings on this planet, like presidents, that cause this destructive turmoil. They actually are unconscious agents. They don't know it, but they're being used to help create this difficulty. Look at all the tremendous changes that occurred because of the Second World War. It wiped out all the feudal, what would you call it, royalties, all the kings and queens, wiped out, brought in new technology, changed, and was the predecessor of, is that the right word? Brought out all the new technology that we have now, wiped out the old. So now there's another change, 80, what is it? How many years since this? 80 odd years since the Second World War, whatever. Not quite, 1945. So, yeah, 80 odd years, because I was born just after the war. Anyways, so another period of great change is occurring, just like you're expressing it yourself. And yeah, people are searching. And it's made to be that way because everything is imperfect and nothing, as much as we like to say we're all equal, nothing is equal.
Amongst those layers of reality, the different realms that exist beyond our perception, would you say there is an imaginal realm where our thoughts and emotions form egregores and intelligences that take on a life of their own?
Yes. That happens also with things like the church or religions. They create what they call thought forms. And yeah, they have life on their own. And sometimes they get used by entities, government, everything, and ourselves also.
Would you say that's responsible for a lot of the spiritual deception?
It's been around always, but yes. And, there's an old story. I know we're running out of time. I'll tell it really quick.
You got time.
There was this yogi. The yogi was meditating, and finally he attained enlightenment. So he's sitting under a tree. He gets up. He's kind of happy. He's enlightened. He's walking, smiling, and thinking of his enlightenment. Then he starts to hear these steps behind them. These steps start to get closer and closer, and he starts, well, who's following me? Then he stops, turns around, and there's this being. And this being says to him, "Congratulations, yogi, on your enlightenment. Why don't you teach me it and I'll organize it?" So then the essence is lost in the organization. Thus, large organizations cause the problem.
Interesting.
And then we like to use the term, not me, but humanity, the idea of the ego. I call it the spiritual egos who they want to earn money, they want power, etc. People want power. They want, here, look at me, look what I know. That's why I don't charge money and I don't do a lot, but I try to reach out through my books, a couple of things for people to get a deeper knowledge.
Last few minutes, is there anything that we didn't cover? Any final thoughts that you'd like to leave us with?
We covered a lot.
We did.
Everybody has opportunity, but everyone has to make their own effort. Praying doesn't really work, right? What's that old saying? God helps those who help themselves. You have to make the effort. You have to want it. There are 4 watchwords of the occultists. That is to will, to know, to dare, and to be silent. You have to will it. You have to want it. Then you have to know it. You have to study it. You have to integrate with it. It can't be just locked up in one part of your brain. But then you have to be daring. Can't just go along hoping sitting every day meditating is what's going to do it. You have to be daring. And that's why if you read many of the stories of the ancients, some of the things that they did were quite bizarre in order to gain knowledge. Then you have to learn to be silent inwardly. So those are called the 4 watchwords that are written on the outside of the sacred temple to the inner worlds.
Well, excellent, Cyrus. This was fascinating. We'll definitely have to talk more in the future. Before I let you go, let the audience know how they can find out more about you.
So, Northern School of Esoteric Wisdom, or www.Northern School of Esoteric Wisdom. My book, Esoteric Writings, Teaching for the Aquarian Age, has a great deal in it, 300 and some odd pages. My first book, Living on the Inner Edge, you want something that's symbol, if you can figure that, that is occult knowledge. It's very, how would you say, Kabbalistic. Very few, I wrote a little bit about it in the book, but only a couple of people have penetrated to a little bit of the knowledge of that symbol itself. It's not mine. It was given to me. So you can reach me. We have esoteric talks twice a month on Tuesday nights at 7:30, where we discuss all these different things. And you can contact me through Northern School of Esoteric Wisdom, the website. Gets a lot of play lately. I'm quite amazed.
Excellent.
Used to get maybe 100 a month, now it's thousands a month.
Wow. That's great. Thank you
Yes.
so much. This was great. Definitely love to talk again in the future. And until next time, everyone, have an excellent evening. We'll talk again tomorrow. If you're looking to start your therapeutic microdosing journey, but don't know where to start, especially when looking for the highest quality ingredients, including nootropics, and what you'd expect from a true microdose capsule, check out our friends at Brainsupreme. They offer the absolute highest quality ingredients so you can start your microdosing journey knowing that you're getting top-notch ingredients. To find out more, visit their website using that link right in the description, and you can get 15% off your entire order. Hello friends, I am so excited to tell you about Independent Media Token. Independent Media Token is a brand new way to show your support for independent media without having to donate a dime. Independent Media Token is a cryptocurrency on the Solana blockchain designed to generate funds to promote and foster the growth of independent content creators, allowing them to engage in their art without having to worry about being demonetized. Through a network of media partners, of which you yourself can become a part of, Independent Media Token's goal is to ensure the powers that be can never cut off all of our areas of funding and censor the only free voices left in the world. Join the movement today. You can pick up Independent Media Token using Phantom Wallet or the Solana wallet of your choice, where you can easily swap your Solana for IMT. Grab some IMT today and remember to always know your team. To learn more, visit independentmediatoken.com or use the link right in the description. Are you and your family prepared for an emergency? Maybe the fake alien invasion. Now is the time to prepare yourself and your family for any event. Check out Prep Starts Now. Their mission is to provide high-quality preparedness products that empower individuals and families to be ready for any situation. They're committed to delivering reliable, trusted gear to ensure your safety, security, and peace of mind in times of need. Their product selection is carefully curated to provide you with the essential gear you need to stay prepared. From emergency kits to tactical tools, every item is chosen for its reliability and practicality. Prep Starts Now understands the importance of family, and their goal is to equip you with everything you need to build a solid plan for your family's preparedness. In today's ever-changing world, being prepared is more important than ever, and Prep Starts Now is here to help you and your family stay ready with quality products and practical guidance. Use the link in the description and get 15% off your order.